Hi, my dear Astro family. Today I'm here with another episode, and we are going to be looking at the upcoming lunation. And this lunation is going to be happening in the sign of Gemini on 13 degree. This is going to be a full moon. A full moon is when the sun and the moon are in opposition. So basically, the moon is on 13 degree of Gemini, and the sun is going to be on 13 degree of Sagittarius. There is a lot happening in this chart. Firstly, the moon is going to be in conjunction to an asteroid called Psyche. So I'm going to touch base on that. It's going to be in trine to Pallas Athene in the sign of Aquarius. Most importantly, this full moon is forming a very exact tight T-square with the nodes. So it means that we are at a crossroad. So definitely I want to talk to you about that as well. But there is a beautiful grand trine happening. The dispositor of this full moon is Mercury, and Mercury is about to be forming a grand trine with Saturn and Jupiter. So there is a lot to discuss connected to this chart. Even I've noticed that the sun is on the midpoint of Venus and Mars. And Mars is out of bound in this chart. Mars is going to start its out of bound journey on the 27th of November, and it's going to last until the 3rd of January. So as you can see, this is a very active full moon chart. So let's dive into it. But I would like to announce two things which I'm actually super excited about. 2025 was a very busy year for me because I was preparing a book. And this is all about house rulership. So I'm looking at each house rulers where they are placed in your chart. Each house rulers being in aspect to another planet. Each house is being on what type of signs we've got on the cusp. So this is a very complex material. Altogether, it is about 1,800 pages, so you can imagine how much work it was. But I'm going to be releasing them one by one. So I'm going to start with the second, the fourth, and the 12th house booklets. The second house booklet is about 150 pages on top of my head. The 12th house booklet is about 120 pages. The fourth house booklet is around 135 pages on top of my head. So this is a very complex guide. And I'm going to the second house booklet is almost ready because we are doing the design for it. It's going to be released in a maximum in 10 days time. So if you would like to pre-purchase these booklets, then you can go on my website, AstroViktor.com. And yes, you can enjoy these booklets. These are super detailed. So if you are an astrology enthusiast, I feel like you must have these booklets. Trust me, these are super detailed. You won't need any other books when it comes to house rulerships. So, for example, the second house booklet, it's not just going to be about money, but self-worth, self-love, food intake, and all those type of stuff. So, basically, you will be able to do your own little readings. I'm super excited about it. I believe it's about £7, so it's about $9 each booklet. I think it's very affordable as well. So go on my website and check it out, AstroViktor.com. And the second thing is we are in a Christmas period, so I've decided to do a Black Friday sales to start with. Everything is going to be 50% off. Almost everything is going to be 50% off. So if you would like to have a personal reading with me, or you would like to study with me, then you will be able to. I think it's super good price right now, so go ahead and book it. The Black Friday sales is going to last for 1 week. But let's get started with this lunation. Now I'm going to be switching off the camera. I'm going to share the screen so you can follow exactly the chart, what is happening. Hopefully everyone can see it. Let me just move this bar. So you can see that we've got the moon in the sign of Gemini right here on 13 degree and 3 minutes, and then the sun is opposing exactly on 13 degree as well. So let's start with the basics in case you are new to my channel, and I would appreciate if you wanted to actually like the video, share the video, comment under the video, as well as subscribe. So the full moon is all about uh, basically a cosmic spotlight. What it does is that from our perspective on Earth, the moon appears fully illuminated by the sun's light, and therefore it's kind of like forming this bright circular disk. Astrologically speaking, the full moon is the peak or the culmination of a lunar cycle, and it happens approximately about every 29.5 days when the sun and the moon are in opposition. So the full moon is going to represent culmination and completion. So projects, goals, or the emotional cycles that began around the preceding new moon reach a point of completion or a turning point. So it illuminates. The moon has got this full light. Uh, so it brings something to surface. It brings hidden issues, truth, or even emotional baggage into full awareness. And therefore, sometimes this is going to talk to us about having to release or letting go of something because it marks that peak. The full moon encourages to say goodbye to something that no longer serves us, such as old patterns, relationship, emotional attachments, because the moon is in preparation for the waning cycle, meaning that the moon is going to start shrinking. So it means that we're going to have to be able to allow our other selves for certain type of purifications. Traditionally speaking, a full moon is said to bring heightened emotions. I mean, the moon rules our emotions and intuition as well. So usually the full moon intensifies our feelings. So it can come with highs, slows, and sometimes stress, or even vivid dreams also. Now, what's very interesting in this chart is that the full moon is actually in a very tight square to the node. So you can see that we've got the north node in the sign of Pisces on 13 degree as well. And the south node is always in opposition. So it's going to be in a 13 degree of Virgo. And so the full moon in Gemini is going to be all about the matters of mind, communication, siblings, local community, gathering information. So the moon is very curious in the sign of Gemini, but it's being opposed by the sun, which is more about broad-mindedness, philosophical. So an opposition is always going to talk to us about having to balance something out. We've got the local details versus the big picture, or we've got the facts and research that Gemini governs versus our beliefs and philosophy. So this is kind of like a peak moment or a realization about, let's say, a specific conversation or a decision that we have to make, or the need to integrate your daily information with your higher truth or even your long-term visions. Now, we've got this exact square to the nodes, and the square is a 90-degree aspect. And the lunar nodes are also considered to be our karmic path. So the north node would be something that we are meant to be walking towards. That's going to be our soul's evolution. The area you are called to lean into for growth. So this is about compassion in the sign of Pisces, spiritual connections, surrender, artistic expressions, faith, and also it's about unity, forgiveness, as well as vision as well. Now, the South Node is in the sign of Virgo, which represents something that is familiar to us, like ingrained habits, past life tendencies, skills. Let's call it as our comfort zone. And it's something that we are meant to release or outgrow. It doesn't mean I'm going to walk away from it completely, because it's a balance point, but we're gonna have to kind of focus on it a little bit less than we used to. So Virgo is the sign of analyzing things, criticizing, perfectionism, the over attention to small details and routines as well. So these full moons light a shine on kind of like a crossroads. Imagine this as a push and pull effect where the information and the communication themes are clashing with your karmic needs to transcend your old patterns of, let's say, control or analysis. And we're going to have to embrace a more compassionate and intuitive path. So this December 4th full moon is somehow releasing old mental patterns and making a crucial decision that will set your path for spiritual growth. You know, it's kind of like being torn between overanalyzing a situation and following your gut feelings. The Gemini moon asks you to clearly articulate what you are learning or deciding, but the square somehow demands that your communication and decisions uh, be in service of your higher purpose, not your critical or anxious type of behaviors. This lunation asks you to let go of the need for perfect information or the perfect handwriting, for example, or wanting to make the perfect decisions or having the perfect results. All those are the Virgo South Node. We have to realize that, by having that hyper focus on details is actually blocking your ability to trust and connect to the universe, to connect to the flow of life, basically. The challenge is, of course, that we're going to have to find a way to serve, and that's the Virgo, with compassion and imagination rather than doing something out of duty or obligations. So this T square, we call in astrology this as a T square, is forcing you to integrate your practical everyday life with your spiritual ideas and beliefs. So this full moon is a catalyst urging you somehow to transcend duality in your way of thinking, to make a choice about where you are investing your mental and emotional energy for the next 1 month. Now, we can see that the sun is in the sign of Sagittarius, and we do have got quite a heavy Sagittarius elements there. So we can see that the Venus is there, the sun is there, Juno is there, and Mars as well. And actually, the sun is sitting on the midpoint of Venus and Mars. So if you are unfamiliar what midpoint is, basically we've got a distance between Venus and Mars, and the sun is halfway through between those two planets. So it's kind of like making a conjunction. We call this as a stellium in astrology. The stellium occurs when we have got three or more planets, according to modern astrology, kind of like clustered together in a single zodiacal sign. Modern astrology says three or more planets. Traditional astrology says four or more planets. I'm going to leave that with you to decide what you classify as stelliums. We are not here to kind of like make a choice on that. But whenever we have got a cluster of planets in one sign, it pretty much indicates that there is a huge focus on that. And the Sagittarius themes are about expansion, truth seeking, philosophy, higher education, travel, optimism, freedom, enthusiasm. It's kind of like the sign of hunger for experiences and truth. And when we have got a stellium, it does talk to us about a certain type of a passion or a very concentrated area of our life. So it looks like that we are very focused on, let's say, initiatives or passionate declarations of our belief or to be able to pursue freedom and adventure in our life. Now, the sun is sitting on the Venus Mars midpoint. And basically, Venus is the planet of love, values, attraction, harmony, desires, even receptivity. And Mars is the planet of action, drive, passion, initiation, conflict. The sun is our will and focus and purpose and consciousness as well. So somehow this configuration is fusing our conscious will with our romantic desire and our assertive drive. So it's kind of like being super passionate about our purpose. There is this surge of confidence and energy, and that's the Sun and Mars, directed towards pursuing things you deeply value or desire, and that's Venus there. So maybe you feel very compelled to act decisively on your ideas and beliefs. The Sun acts like a conscious integrator between Venus and Mars right now. So actually, it makes it easier to somehow align with what we want with how you go about getting it. So what we desire is Venus, and what how we go after what we desire is going to be Mars, and all in the sign of Sagittarius. So that's exciting. So it's kind of like being passionate about, going after our love life, for example, or expressing our, freedom of love and our opinions and so forth. This stellium brings a desire for truthful connections. I mean, Venus represents relationships and Mars represents confrontations. So this is fueled by the need for honesty, freedom, shared philosophical understanding. Maybe this is about seeking a partner or a relationship that matches my spirit of adventure. This is also potentially a fantastic time for starting an ambitious project or taking a risk that aligns with your optimistic nature. But it is opposing the moon. So what does the moon tell us? Gather the facts. Make sure you get, the information right. Study a little bit. Don't just be kind of like running after something that you desire badly. We need the right information for that as well. So while the full moon in Gemini is illuminating and trying to release old, fragmented patterns of thoughts, because sometimes what happens with the moon in moon in Gemini is that we are kind of like a little bit anxious, antsy, and and in a way it says, yes, get your facts right. Once we have got that, go after something that you are truly passionate. Now look at this full moon. This full moon is being disposed by Mercury. The reason why it's being disposed by Mercury is because Gemini is ruled by Mercury. So wherever Mercury is, it's basically playing a role in the full moon elements. But Mercury in its shadow zone. A shadow zone means that Mercury was retrograde, um, and it went direct, but it is still on the retrogression degrees. So Mercury went retrograde on 6 degree of Sagittarius, and then it backtracked to 20 degree of Scorpio, and then it decided to go direct, and then now it's on 22 degree. So Mercury is the planet that processing the information. So Mercury is in Scorpio. This is where some of the major events are going to be happening. So Mercury in Scorpio is investigating. It's intense, it's very strategic, it's very focused. It turns that chatty energy of Gemini into something more deep and penetrating and psychological. So, I mean, Gemini and Scorpio are kind of like the investigators of the zodiacal circle. So, therefore, this is indication of surely we are looking for something. It's kind of like looking for a lost object. So here we are looking for a piece of information. We are looking for, or we are investigating certain type of emotional intensities, psychological motivations. So therefore, our communication style, which is Gemini, is a little bit more strategic, quiet, intense, aimed at uncovering what lies beneath the surface. So the message of this full moon is imagine that as it passes through the lens of Mercury in Scorpio. So we are deep diving into the truth. A truth is coming to light here. The Mercury in Scorpio demands that you use your insights you receive to investigate the root cause of anything that is happening in your life. It is telling you that your communication needs to be strategic. Any release or decision made during this lunation, it must be handled strategically. It's not necessarily about a casual conversation, a chit chat. This is a well-researched, kind of like a little bit detail-orientated, kind of like conversations. And Scorpio is very emotional as well. So when we get that piece of information or data, it looks like that we are processing that kind of emotionally as well. But what it also tells us that we have to be able to filter this through potentially some uncomfortable emotions, for example. Maybe you have to confront a psychological truth or a shared secret, before you can fully integrate this revelation. Now, the shadow zone indicates that it's an unfinished business. So we did a lot of reevaluation. There were some unresolved matters. And this time around, that Mercury indicates that, uh, you know, that truth that you are meant to uncover might be kind of like something recycled. It's something that happened in the past, and then now you are kind of like kind of like looking at whether that data or fact is somehow right. So you are circling back to a truth, a commitment, a secret, a power dynamic that you thought was resolved. But somehow it still requires that final, deeper confrontation before you can move forward. So we've got this engine here, which is the Sagittarius stellium. And that is a drive and passion to, let's say, pursue our higher truth, freedom, education, and so forth. There's a crisis point here with the Gemini full moon to the square to the nodes, which is a maximum tension that you are meant to be releasing old mental habits, like being worried all the time about moving forward and moving towards your own vision. And imagine Mercury in Scorpio, who is the processor here. So it says that it's a necessary step to strategically and emotionally dismantle all these recurring issues in your life before that drive of the Sagittarian part of your chart can successfully launch, and then it can lead to certain type of like growth, basically. So before we leaping into this expanded vision or expansive future, you must first figure out the truth, your own uncomfortable psychological baggages that is potentially trapping you in certain type of old routines. Now that Mercury forms a beautiful grand trine with the Jupiter and Saturn, and you can see that Jupiter is in the sign of Cancer, being retrograde, and Saturn went direct recently, but it's still on stationary degrees. So this is kind of like a saving grace here. It represents a lot of healing opportunities. It is kind of like giving a lot of intuitive support here. So the Grand Trine, by the way, is kind of like a triangle. And it is an aspect pattern which is formed by minimum three planets, and those planets are 120 degrees away from each other, and they are in the same element. So in this case, it's a water grand trine. So we've got the Mercury in Scorpio, who is the investigator, right? We've got Jupiter in Cancer, which wants to expand something. So Jupiter wants you in the sign of Cancer to feel more emotionally secure. It wants you to do family healing. It wants you to have the boundless compassion. While Saturn is in the sign of Pisces, and Saturn is kind of like a disciplinarian. It's the load of karma. So it wants you to be spiritually mature. It wants you to create boundaries. It wants you to turn your dreams into reality. So this is going to be, by the way, the very last grand trine that Mercury is forming. So we had one a couple of months ago, then we had one a few weeks ago, and this is the very last one. So you can kind of think about it as the last opportunity to make our dreams come true. You know, the previous two trines, grand trines, brought the initial awareness of this necessary truth, the reevaluation of those subconscious processing of the matter that you might have gone through during the retrograde period. Currently, this is the final grand trine, which is the moment of implementation, a clear understanding. Hopefully, you've done the mental work. Now it's fully complete. And then now you are ready to put everything into action. So, what you can kind of like imagine is that Mercury in Scorpio is the mental seed, and Jupiter is the emotional nurturer. We are applying the truth that we have discovered with Mercury in Scorpio, and then we go through this emotional healing, especially in our family karma, for example. And Saturn in Pisces is going to be giving you spiritual foundation. It wants to be stabilizing the spiritual reality, and it wants to set certain type of boundaries. So again, let's bring all of it together. The full moon squares the nodes, right? So it's a communications crisis here. And you have to be making a decision about where maybe to go or what area of life I want to grow. Like I said, the Sagittarius stellium is the drive. So we want to create a better future. And the grand trine between Mercury, Jupiter, and Saturn can help you to facilitate this. It says, I give you unconditional support. I give you a lot of intuition there. But you're going to have to experience this emotional healing. So the clarity, the release that is brought forward by this full moon is not just intellectual or stressful. This grand trine is somehow telling you that it's a karmic closure. If you are diving into the truth, of course. It's like a emotional or spiritual breakthrough. Now, I've also would like to mention that this full moon is on Scorpio Dwods. Someone asked me last time in the chat box how to spell Dwods. So it has got two spellings, D-U-A-D or D-W-A-D. Okay, because I'm guessing someone wanted to look it up what exactly the Dwods are. So what's very interesting is that the Dwods are always about hidden agendas. And each sign, which is 30 degree, is further subdivided into 10 smaller sections. So actually 12 smaller sections, 2.5 degree each. So this moon is going to be falling onto Scorpionic Dwat. And again, you know, we have spoken about Scorpio already. That's not a surface level information, you know, that's some tough questions there. You know, the mind somehow meets depth here. You know, this full moon is not satisfied with these chit chats and light conversations or quick answers. That mind is super compelled to dig for the hidden motivation. It wants to figure out the truth. This is about a psychological transformation as well, not just kind of like a change of opinion. Oh, this is what I thought, and then now I'm thinking differently. Not at all. This is about psychologically transforming your entire ways of thinking. And somehow this scorpionic, what it looks like, that it's echoing, of course, Mercury in Scorpio as well. You know, the Gemini is often just very interested in the surface information. The ruler is all about the truth and very investigative. So yeah, I don't want to be venting about this, but this is really a psychological healing event, healing connections with others, healing connections with your family, healing connections with yourself as well. Now, the other thing that we can see is that the moon is in a quite a tight trine to Pallas Athene. Now, the reason why I wanted to mention Pallas Athene is because Pallas Athene is also about strategic movements. Pallas Athene is one of the four major asteroids, and it represents wisdom, pattern recognition, strategic thinking. This is about problem solving. Long-term strategies. Pallas Athene always, it doesn't just focus on the quick fixes, it focuses on the long-term impact of that. And then it comes up with the problem solving, kind of like in a very, um, like in effective ways. So on one hand, because it's Aquarius, that's a very inventive sign. So this is about, let's say, sitting down with our friends, coming up with a solution, for example, for the long run, or strategies that benefit the collective or humanity or our networking and so forth. It's about finding unconventional solutions to any of our problems. This is telling us to try something that we haven't tried yet, basically. And it's a very beautiful trine to the full moon. So on one hand, it says that we are meant to be kind of like processing this piece of information that is going to get revealed to us in an objective way, in a detached way. Instead of being like overwhelmed by our feelings, let's just step back and look at the situation with a little bit more rational approach. And then let's come up with the strategy. How am I going to communicate about this piece of information? Let's convert that piece of information into something smart. So it's not just about discovering the truth, but knowing how I'm going to use this piece of information to create that better future for myself or for my family or for my community. Like I said, Pallas Athene is about pattern recognition. So we're going to have to see the bigger picture. And that's very interesting because Sagittarius is about the big picture, while Gemini sometimes gets lost a little bit in details. So Pallas says, step back, look at the little details and then see the bigger picture. And what did we say about this new moon that is bang on squaring the south node, which says, you know what, we don't have to always focus on the flows of the system, looking at the mundane, minute little details. We sometimes need to go with the flow as well. So again, it really feels like that Pallas Athene echoes the exact same story. It says that we're gonna have to come up with an execution plan. Now, like I said, the moon is actually in conjunction to an asteroid called Psyche. And Psyche was named after the Greek goddess, and she represents the soul, the search for true love, deep psychological woundings, the difficult journey of transformation. I've spoken about Psyche quite a lot in my yearly forecast, which I prepared for each rising sign All of them are approximately about 2.5, 3 hours long, because Psyche will be spending a lot of time in the sign of Gemini until May 2026. And it started its journey sometimes in July, August 2024. So, what it really feels like is that this full moon becomes a time when your soul's deepest needs and the psychological processes are illuminated. Um, so it's an illumination of the soul's wounds. It's an illumination on your core psychological vulnerability or even past trauma. I mean, Psyche went through a lot of trials. This moon is on Scorpionic Dwad. So again, there is the traumatic elements there. So this is quite a traumatic chart. And also it says that the words have got a huge power. Like I said, the solution to this soul level issue will come through communication. So maybe with that shrine to Pallas Athene is imagine that you are on a social gathering, we sit down, and then all of a sudden there is this illuminating conversation that you are having. It comes out of the blue somehow. So that's also, I just wanted to briefly touch base on. The other thing that I wanted to mention to you is that Mars is out of bound in this chart. And the out of bound starts on November 27th and it finishes on 3rd of January. And the reason why I wanted to mention that is because obviously Mars is part of this configuration by being in the sign of Sagittarius. And an out-of-bound planet is when the planet's declination, which is the angular distance north or south of the celestial equator, exceeds 23.27. And that's the maximum declination of the sun. So this planet looks like that it has left the kingdom, basically. And when Mars is out of bound, basically it talks to us about unusual actions. Something we do with it, or the way how we go after what we want and desire, like I've mentioned already with Venus, is kind of unconventional, unexpected, shocking. An out-of-bound Mars is always breaking the rules. It disregards the norms, it pursues the goals in a very relentless and boundary-pushing way. So, of course, we already have got a lot of Sagittarian energy here, and Mars is amplifying that. And then it's really kind of like supercharged to figure out the truth, for example. It is about extreme ways of wanting to create the freedom. It's like an unstoppable drive to break free from any type of constraints, basically. It even can become quite fanatical when it comes to expressing the opinions or taking a major risk just for the sake of principles as well. This is looking for the truth in a very unconventional way. So, um, so it really feels like with that Mars that something is at high stake here. So this is the full moon. Now I want to give you um um, some scenarios, how I might be able to imagine this playing out globally as well as on a personal level, because of course you might want to be able to relate it to your own chart. So I can imagine that there are certain type of leak happening, a leak of information, and that can cause an ideological battle. So, firstly, the out of bound Mars, it's kind of like an ideological battle. It's surrounded by a massive, data leak, for example. And the full moon exposes something like, right? So this is illuminating a hidden corruption or psychological manipulation schemes. Maybe it's happening at a global institution, for example. And this exposed piece of information, let's say, forces governments or citizens to confront the karmic reality. And those are the nodes there. It is somehow forcing us to realize that a system, Virgo, that we've built is unsustainable. So we become more critical towards a system. Now, Pallas Athene says, okay, we just experienced a bit of a chaos, or we are angry, we are having a debate because that got potentially ignited by the Venus Mars type of energies. So let's just step back a second. Let's look at our policies in a strategic, detached way. And then it says, okay, we've got a piece of truth. This is undeniable. But what if we created new ones? What if we came up with a unconventional, more ethical standards, for example, for data protection and so on? On a personal level, I can imagine that maybe you reach a culmination in a key relationship because Psyche is often a relationship indicator, or it illuminates that deepest soul wounds and revealing somehow a pattern of interaction that has been undermining your emotional security. So the wound can manifest as a need to overanalyze and nitpick something just to feel safe. And it gets fueled by the out of bound Mars as well, because Mars feels unstoppable. It's super passionate to communicate something uncomfortable, let's say with a partner of ours. And we may give ultimatum to someone. So choose which way you want to go because I am tired of lies. And on one hand, it says you have to abandon the critical and the controlling routine. And then we're just going to have to move on. And, we're going to have faith and we're going to have shared visions. Of course, so like you can see, this chart is a little bit about having to have difficult conversations, but with that beautiful grand trine, it looks like that the conversation can go pretty well, especially if we do that with grace. And if we show empathy and commitment, and then together we can establish, more like boundaries, spiritually aligned boundaries to protect ourselves. Also, it can really indicate that, because this full moon has got a mental duality to it, or the overthinking elements, which of course is triggered by an external event. And then all of a sudden, we realize that we are in the same patterns all over again. And I did that, let's say, 18 months ago. I did that 10 years ago. And then you start kind of like digging deeper into your own psychological truth and as well as your fears. And then you realize that all these fears are somehow responsible for my constant need for control and perfection and so forth. So the out of bound Mars is going to says I have to be super committed to expose these ingrained habits, these negative self-talk, self-criticism, and I'm going to have to be able to walk away from it. And the Grand Trine is basically helping you to connect with your inner wisdom, and then it creates that emotional security. And that's when Pallas Athene can pop into the picture, kick in, basically. And then I'm going to develop more objective and mental health strategies. So these are some of the kind of like scenarios, but I'm going to give you a couple of more so that we fully understand what exactly happens. The other scenario that actually comes to my mind is that let's imagine that we have got a financial situation and maybe it reaches a climax. Maybe this is a major expense related to a long distance travel or education or foreign investments. And I'm going to have to be making a decision about it. So that full moon is going to illuminate kind of like two competing financial narratives. One is the Virgo. Let's create this detailed budget conscious planning. And then the North Node is a spiritual call to trust and invest into that because my intuition is telling me that that's the right course of action. Now, Mercury in Scorpio says we're going to have to investigate, we're going to have to look at, the ethical implications of that investment, or we're going to have to uncover the hidden debts, or let's just, look at whether, how it performs. Let's dig deeper, basically. And the water grand trine, especially if you made this choice, it leads to basically increase. The out of bound Mars is giving you a lot of unconventional confidence here and wants to take those big leaps and risks as well. So, in a way, you're going to have to discern it. You're going to have to kind of slow it down a little bit. But I think Jupiter in Cancer gives you the emotional security and support. Maybe a family member is going to shed light something onto you. And Saturn says, okay, let's create this structured financial plan. So these are some of the scenarios that I can actually imagine kind of like happening. Of course, we would be able to come up with a lot more scenarios, but you would need to be kind of like looking at your own chart. So firstly, this is going to be a super important lunation for you. If you've got any planets on 13 degree of Gemini or 22 degree of Scorpio, or even 13 degree of Sagittarius, 13 degree of Virgo, or 13 degree of Pisces. So those are the five sensitive degrees that I would be looking at, because then surely you are going to be triggered quite significantly. So I recommend looking at your solar arc planets, your natal planets, as well as your progress planet. In case you don't know kind of like how to do that, for example, I'm going to pull up my own chart and then I'm gonna look at my own natal chart first. Do I have any planets on 13 degree of the mutable signs? So 13 degree Sagittarius, no, I don't have anything. That's 5 degree away. It might be a little bit too far. Okay, do I have anything on 13 degree of Pisces? Absolutely. I've got Mars being quite close. So I'm gonna note that down, that this is going to be affecting my first house. The full moon takes place in the fourth house, so it's going to be affecting my fourth and first house surely. Do I have any planet on 22 degree of Scorpio? No, I don't have any planets. And then after, you are looking at your secondary progression and your solar arc as well. So this is how I would do if you were a client of mine. Okay, look at that. Yeah, the moon is sitting on 16 degree of Gemini. So, okay, that's the progressed moon. So that's actually super important. So the moon plays a very significant role. And the moon is the ruler of my love life. So it's going to be affecting somehow my relationships. And then do I have anything on 22 degrees Scorpio? No, nothing. Anything on 13 degree of Pisces? Nothing. 13 degree of Virgo? Nothing. Okay, so the moon is affected there. And then in the solar arc chart, again, the same degrees that you are looking at. Okay, it is actually Pluto. So you take note of that. This is how I would prepare kind of like a consultations for someone. So I'm just gonna write down. Okay, so the full moon is happening in the fourth house, and then you give a general interpretation of that. Oh, okay, it's home, family, relocation. You take notes. Okay, the progressed moon is in the fourth house as well currently. So that just echoes what actually happens. So there is an illumination about my home and family life. And then we could see that there is a solar arc Pluto in Sagittarius, which is my 10th house. So I'm going to take a note of that because the full moon is going to be opposing that. So the fourth and the 10th house, which is about work and life balance, for example, or relocating because of work or parenting and so on. And then it was affecting my natal Mars, which is the ruler of my ninth house, for example, the house of relocation. So it looks like that maybe one interpretation it could be is that this full moon is going to illuminate the need to relocate, for example, to another country to get a better job. Okay, but that's just one way to interpret this. So I hope that makes sense, everyone, how you can be kind of like doing a bit of interpretation about how this full moon is affecting you. But if you need more guidance on that, then you can book a reading with me. Remember, there is the Black Friday sale on right now, and I can help you navigate your life through astrology. Thank you very much, everyone, for being here, and I will see you in my next video. Take care. Bye bye.